Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I've got Sebastian Rusk here. He's an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and podcaster. He's the president of Podcast Launch Lab and the podcast host of Beyond the Story podcast. And one of the things he loves to talk about is how podcasts suck if you don't have one. And I love that he always says that. But Sebastian, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more and tell our audience about you.
Well, thanks for having me, Philip. It's great to be here. And my name is Sebastian Rusk. I'm the founder of the Podcast Launch Lab. We help folks go from idea to iTunes in 90 days or less by starting a podcast with our proven podcast launch solution. And then we support you ongoing with our 12-month podcast incubator, where we handle all the editing for your show, micro content. You're part of my community. You've got access to me, to a la carte coaching, I like to call it. So we got a good thing going on over here at the Podcast Launch Lab. And then my personal brand as an author, speaker, and content creator. I'm really a storyteller by trade, and I've been doing that for the past, I'd say, 12 years. I started back I've been in social media since the beginning, so 2002, and I turned it into a business in 2010. And 6 years later, decided the work that I was doing within the digital space was not fulfilling, and I needed to dig a little bit deeper. And I always say the podcasting found me and allowed me to stay within the same realm of the digital space without having to leave it, but really being able to niche down and find that real category of one that I can just exploit as much as possible to help people better understand what's possible with the power of podcasting.
Awesome. So you mentioned about, basically taking 8 years for you to kind of go out onto your own. What was the kind of hurdles to overcome that, really going out on your own from 2002 to 2010?
Well, I'd been on my own. I lost my ass in 2008. So I had to start all over again. So I've been an entrepreneur since 2003.
Okay.
And 2008 came around, market crashed, lost everything, moved back to Miami, started all over again. In 2008 to 2010, I didn't do much from 2008 to 2009. I drank beer and watched daytime television. I drank bum beer. Bum beer are those four cans of Tall Boys for like $3. I did that for a year, and then I started to get back in the mix, and I got a gig with a network marketing company in Las Vegas. Not as, hey, come to my house on Tuesday night and join my network marketing. I worked on the corporate side of things, and that involved a lot of training, a lot of stage time. And that was my first experience of being able to get on stage. And I was like, well, let me back up. Going to the event for the network marketing company, when I was first exposed to the company at all, was down here in South Florida. It was one of those Saturday morning dog and pony shows at a hotel, and everyone's there and everyone's excited and tell everybody about it. And this is the ground floor opportunity. And I didn't give a rip about any of that stuff. Because two guys took the stage, and when they took the stage, I was like, I want to do that. And I'll never forget, I'm still friends with the guys to these days. They're just uber successful in the space and have grown brands and businesses exponentially. A guy by the name of Brian Underwood and Jason Bournet. Brian owns a company called Prove It, which is probably one of the largest keto supplement providers on the planet. And Jason Bournet is just an absolute legend in the direct sales space. So it's funny, here we are some 12 years later. I'm still in touch with those guys. Don't talk to them a lot, but I was right, because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of guys that were doing that. So they didn't end up staying with the company. Neither did I. It was like a summer gig that I had in Las Vegas. I call it my summer Vegas vacation. But what it did was allow me to get in and start creating. I never forget, we created a product called Ad Labs, and the premise of the company was to be able to go out and provide local SEO services to businesses. That was the actual product for the network. So I was like, well, we got to train people how to actually sell this stuff and not just recruit people in it. So I created this whole, and it's funny, my company ended up being the Podcast Launch Lab. I can't get away from the whole lab name, but that was my first experience. And then I got back in 2009, and I'm like, I got a little bit of momentum here, but I need to go see Tony Robbins. So I woke up one day, I was like, I need to go see Tony Robbins. So I called my friend Whitney, who was working for Tony at the time. And she filled me in on the details about getting out to Unleash the Power Within in Long Beach, California that year. So I hung up the phone. And I was like, well, this is great. And now I got to figure out how to get there. I mean, I had no money. I had no car. I had a bus pass and a skateboard. And I don't believe in fake it till you make it. That's just terrible advice. But what I do believe in is playing the part until you become the part, acting as if. And I was a firm believer, in that. So it was a 2000. Yeah. So my friend fills me in the details on Tony Robbins. And then she calls me back an hour later and she's like, shit, I totally forgot that my best friend lives on Miami Beach and she's part of Tony's core team of 6. She travels the world with them and she'd be a great introduction. So let me introduce you guys. And I'm like, cool. So I'm already a connector by default, but I'm starting to get my mojo back a little bit here. And I connect with her and she's just over the top energy. And I could tell she's uber successful in the whole 9. And I showed her a video that I had shot. I was doing direct marketing for realtors in Southern California. When the market crashed, there was nobody to sell anything to because banks weren't even lending. So when I came back, I was trying to figure out what could I do to get that same, is there a similar hustle of being able to help businesses and brands with direct marketing? And then I started to get, and I told myself, you know what, one thing I'm not going to do this second time around is I'm going to build a brand that's sustainable. I'm going to build a brand where people are investing in me and in what I'm doing, not just, I still felt like, well, the company did really well and we had a lot of success. It didn't matter at the end of the day because I ended up losing everything because I was young, I was foolish, and I just didn't know any better. But I also, that type of business, direct marketing, your clients love you one week and they want to kill you the next week. Like they don't there's no happy medium, and you're only as good as your last week, and you got to keep selling and you got to keep producing. There's no way for people to be able to buy something and then continue to pay for it ongoing. And they with them creating their own results from it. So I knew I wanted to get away from that. And I went and met with this friend that was introduced to me that travels with Tony. And we met for a drink that same week. And she said, we hit it off immediately and same energy level and the whole 9. I could just tell that she was crushing it with Tony. I mean, you don't go to work for Tony unless you're crushing it. I mean, in fact, that's what she said. She's like, you don't have this job unless you're doing the type of volume that I'm doing. And I'm like, all right, cool. Very, very inspiring. So she's like, so what's next for you? And I said, I don't know. And she looked at me and she goes, that's a problem. And that's the PG version. Yeah. She said, that's a problem. And these were my offended days. So I was like, what do you mean? That's a problem. I'm like, okay, well, enlighten me. What do you mean by that's a problem? She said, so let me ask you a question. This is where it all changed, Phil. She said, who's missing out because you're not showing up? And I was like, wow,
this is deep.
Never thought about that way. So, she goes, why don't you start a YouTube channel? All this social media experience, a TV show. There's a lot of buzz around social media. And I was like, how about Social Buzz TV? And she's like, that sounds catchy. So that Monday, I found a freelancer. I sent him those 3 words and came back to me with what became the Social Buzz TV logo. And Social Buzz TV would be an online media outlet that creates content, that does educational workshops, that helps people with their social media, and that eventually gets their business on an ongoing basis to help them set things up and manage it monthly. That's exactly how it panned out. I didn't plan it that way. I spent the rest of that year that I'd met her running around town, evangelizing what I was going to be doing on my skateboard, on a bus with no money, acting the part, playing the part, just knowing that if you make enough noise, someone will come knock on your door. And that's exactly what started to happen, because at the end of that year, I was attending events. And I was like, well, how hard is it to actually create events and do them on my own, like local networking events? So I went over to the local Morton's around the corner here, and I happened to know the girl that was doing all the events. And I was like, hey, listen, so I want to do a networking event here. I don't care what day of the week it is, but I need you to give me 2 free cocktails. This is Miami. Nobody drinks 2 drinks. No one. And pass appetizers around. And then the next day I need the room upstairs because I'm going to bring everybody back for a social media boot camp. She's like, all right, let's do it. So I had a couple sponsors come in. They set their banners up, their pamphlets that nobody reads and throws in the garbage, all that fun stuff. And it was a success. I had 85 people there. I had like 40 people at my social media boot camp. I charged $55 and I'll spend 3 hours with you and have lunch and tell you everything I know about startup podcasts, about social media. So I started to position myself as the go-to person. Now, right around this time, right before the event time had launched, right in the beginning, right when I got back from Vegas, and I'd started Social Buzz TV Initiative. I met a guy by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, and Gary just forever altered the path that I was on. I read his first book, Crush It, and we got in touch right after that. And then his second book, Thank You Economy, came out. We had a unique opportunity to be able to sit down and spend some time together here in Miami. And that was kind of full circle within 12 months of, hey, let me read. I read the guy's book, didn't know who he was. I borrowed a friend's Audible account, downloaded it to my iPod, and listened to it. And then a year later, I was sitting down with the guy, and he had become just an incredible mentor. And a couple of things that I learned from him right out of the gates were that, if you're going to build a brand, cool, but make sure you're building a personal brand too, because your personal brand in perpetuity is your reputation. And I never forgot about that. And I was already starting to do that anyway, because I knew I wanted to be a speaker. I didn't know about the book stuff yet. I knew that would eventually come, but I knew that I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be a content creator. I wanted to be a storyteller. And then I also wanted to provide a service on a monthly basis. So I actually had a business. So I was starting to do these things simultaneously. And then the speaker business is a tough one to figure out. But in 2013, I thought, if I'm going to do this, I mean, I was born to be on stage. My gift is to communicate. I need to get around some other folks that are doing the same thing. So I got in a mix with the National Speakers Association, and I went to their annual conference in where was it? Philadelphia in 2013. I called them up and I go, I didn't have any money to buy tickets. I was like, hey, I'm a content creator. I'm media for all intents and purposes. Social Buzz TV. Nobody ever said no to that. So I said, listen, I wear bow ties, I create content. Maybe let me in the door, and I'm going to cover the conference, and et cetera. And like, oh, okay, sounds great. So they actually let me in, and I did that. Nice. I did that crap all the time to be able to talk myself into networking events anywhere that there was a fee involved. I would just be like, I got a bow tie and a camera. I'll give you a video, and they're like, all right, let this guy in. or I just wouldn't leave them alone until they let me in. So I went to Philadelphia that year, sight unseen, not knowing what was what. I had a couple of buddies that were keynote speakers, so I did at least have some sort of familiarity. One of my good dear mentors was keynoting the main stage, and that's the holy grail of being a professional speaker. If you get the main stage at the annual Influence Conference in front of 2,500 of your other speaker colleagues, and you get a standing ovation, like that's a rite of passage in the speaker world. And he got just that. So I had known a couple of people in the social media space that had become professional speakers, and they were actively involved in NSA. And I don't know, one thing led to another. I was in the sponsor area, like the sponsor expo area. And my buddy Joe that owns espeakers.com said, hey, I need to introduce you to somebody real quick. And he walks me over to this booth, and this guy's about 7'2". And he goes, this is Adam Whitty. He owns a company called Advantage Media. They help people write books. And I said, interesting. I said, great to meet you, Adam. He said, it's great to meet you too. And I said, and he said, have you ever thought about writing a book before? I said, Adam, I think about it every day, but I'd rather wake up in the morning and punch myself in the face and eat my pillow than write another chapter. And he goes, what if you could just talk your book to somebody? And I go, well, I could talk until next year. And he goes, yeah, we have a talk your book program where we interview you for 8 to 10 hours, and then we transcribe it, and then we edit it down with you with a full-blown editing team. And we have a finished product in like 90 days and around 90 days. And I said, awesome. How much is that? He said, $25,000. I said, fantastic. Do you guys have a social media strategy? And he goes, no, we don't, but we should. I go, yeah, no, you guys are insane. You guys are catering to speakers, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people that want to write a book. You need to have an active social media strategy. And he goes, I think you're right. And he goes, how much do you charge a year? I go, I charge $24,000 a year. I go, why don't we just call it a deal? He goes, you know what? I think this may work. Let's set up a call next week. So we did just that. I think it was, that was in, I want to say July or August. We had our first call by October. We began writing in November. I think I got the first books by February. So first book was called Social Media Sucks If You Don't Know What You're Doing. And I told basically this whole story, but also my overview of where I thought we were at with all of this and what I had learned from Gary thus far, et cetera. And that really started to open up a tremendous amount of doors. In fact, they came to the table. So we got that deal done. And as soon as that deal was inked, they said, hey, let's right out of the gates. We've got a speaking gig for you with an organization called EO, which is an entrepreneur organization, phenomenal organization for business owners, high net business owners. And as luck would have it, Gary was the keynote and I was the concurrent session right after Gary at the same conference. So the world continued to get smaller and smaller as I knew it. And that's when the speaking stuff really started to happen. But then I started to realize that there's a couple problems with the speaking business. Number one, people don't want to pay speakers. There's very, very few. I have like 2 friends that make $1 million a year speaking. 2 out of how many speakers are in the world? I mean, it's very, very, very hard to do. And I thought, well, I went to a conference in 2013, right shortly thereafter, a social media conference called Social Fresh. And I was asked for feedback. I'm like, hey, what did you think about I was there again as a blogger or content creator or whatever it was. And he said, what did you think of the conference? And I said, it was great. But by lunch on the first day, again, I wanted to punch myself in the face due to the lack of energy. I mean, social media people are really cool, but not overly exciting. I mean, I was an anomaly in the crowd. He goes, well, what do you suggest? And I'm like, why don't you let me MC the next conference you guys are having in San Diego later this year? And then I'd never been an MC in my life, but I've been on stage and I'm like, how hard can this be? I mean, I was already identifying when you have a gift to be on stage and communicate, when it's truly like your core gift. A lot of people want to be a speaker and become a speaker, but they still suck at speaking and no one will tell them because their mom continues to tell them they're great, great. But when it's truly like at your core, it's your gift, you automatically go in and you're critiquing and identifying opportunities all over the place. You're picking speakers apart. You're figuring out the good parts, the bad parts, what you're picking the event apart, how it can be better. And I believe that is the true, essence of the world of communicating and also live events. So I was already envisioning like, well, music can be playing. I could be, I could be taking the stage from this angle. I wear bow ties. I could be engaging. I already knew in my head that I could pull it off. So he called me a few months later. He was like, you know what, we're going to give you a shot. I can't pay you, but I'll get you out here and I'll put you up. I'm like, yeah, just make sure it doesn't cost me any money. Well, I'm glad that I took that gig, because that allowed me to start meeting some peers in the social media space. So I'd already met Gary, but there were some other thought leaders in the space like Mari Smith, the queen of Facebook, who became a dear friend, Mike Stelzner, the founder of Social Media Examiner, Pat Flynn, one of the biggest podcasters and YouTubers out there. I was able to develop relationships by default because I'm hanging out with these people in the green room. So I found that niche in between. If I get called to speak, great. If I don't, do you guys have an MC for your event? So I continued to rinse and repeat that process of doing events, and then the phone would ring and I would get paid for an event. And then I was like, well, that was cool because I was doing these events for free. And then it all changed one day when I was on Twitter and I saw an ad for a conference called Traffic and Conversion Summit. And that a company called Digital Marketer puts on every year. And I followed them from the ad. I followed Digital Marketer, and then Twitter's suggestions were like, hey, you should follow this guy named Ryan Dice. Well, I had no idea who Ryan Dice was. Lo and behold, the guy's an absolute marketing legend, and Digital Marketer and Traffic and Conversions is the biggest marketing stage to be on the planet, hands down. So I replied back and I go, hey, do you need somebody to rock your stage for the upcoming Traffic and Conversions? And he replies back, actually, we do. And can we schedule a call tomorrow? And we hopped on a call the next day. He goes, listen, I'm moving away from this role as the founder. I can't be in multiple places. We definitely need a good MC. So yeah, we definitely need you. Let's get you on board. And he's like, how much is this going to cost me? And I was like, oh shit. It's going to be $2,500 a day plus travel, food, and incidentals. He goes, all right, cool. Send your information over. I'll loop you in with my team. We'll get you paid tomorrow. So there we go. $7,500 right off for like the first official real, speaking gig, that I had. I was mind blown that I had pulled that off. That opportunity had, that was, they had, they bring every large marketer on the planet in there. I was there. I emceed the year Gary was there again. Oddly enough, Gary and I run into each other in a different city, and he's always headed to Miami. It was crazy how that worked out. But, to the likes of being able to rub shoulders with existing celebrities, but develop relationships with, Damon John. I had known Damon for a long time anyway, but reinitiating that relationship. Kevin from the original Shark Tank. Kevin, his name's slipping
O'Leary, I think.
No, O'Leary's still on it. Kevin, I can't believe I don't remember. The guy's a friend of mine. Sorry, Kevin, for watching this. Anyway, being able to reinitiate these relationships was just incredible. I ended up doing that show for about 4 years, and I swear the ripple effect still happens from that opportunity. It literally still does, because I still get phone calls, or I'll run into people and they're like, didn't you MC Traffic and Conversion? In fact, I was back last year with a consulting client I work with. They were the VIP sponsor. So I was there just to make introductions for them. So it was kind of fun to be on that side of the fence. And then I guess it was probably 2019. I just started to get this like this feeling of like, I had a couple less than pleasurable experiences as an MC, because, they hire you to be MC and they're all excited, but then you get there and you're just like the stage bitch. Like you're
Mhm.
like, you're not the star of the show. And that's cool. It was a good ego check that I was not, in fact, the star of the show, which was totally cool. But and then I had an honest conversation with myself, Phil. And I said, Sebastian, answer the question. Do you want to do the work? Yes or no? No, I don't. I no longer want to do it. I no longer want to be the first guy there, the last one to leave. You can't miss the stage. You're there. You're thrown into the mix for what's called, and you're just a hired gun to do a job, collect a check, and go home. And I was just born for way more than that. So I decided to just stop emceeing events and close that side of my business. And I did that in 2019. I have friends and some clients and people that are, I mean, Gary calls me, I'm going to help him out, but I mean, very rare. And they that will try and talk me back into doing it. And a lot of times they do, because the number is just undeniable. I'd be foolish not to do it. But I decided that I make far greater impact by being on stage. And I don't care if people don't pay speakers, because I have a phenomenal back end. And if just one person joins our program, I'm still able to clear 5 figures for that talk that I give. God forbid there's 2 or 3 in the audience to be able to do it. So I always offer to speak for free. Just get me there. Make sure it doesn't cost me any money. I won't charge you a nickel to speak. Just know that I'm going to over deliver on value. And I don't need an offer. I don't need sign up forms. I don't need people at the back of the room. I don't need any of that. I just know that if I over deliver, even if I don't give my contact information out, people will hunt me down and find me and hire me. So that's pretty much how the world of, becoming a speaker, then an MC and speaker, and now just a full-time speaker. That's the only thing that I'm focused on stage wise. Now, there are a couple caveats in that some events don't have any speaker spots available, or my topic is not a fit within there. So like, for example, a lot of these Web3 events are starting, these NFT events are starting. Like, what in the world am I going to talk about pertaining to NFTs and podcasts other than me having an NFT podcast? So I'm in the process of figuring that out, but through carefully cultivated relationships, I've met a lot of these event planners. And Miami NFT week happened last month. And it was gigantic, 3 days, 15,000 attendees. Well, I met the founder in Austin at South by Southwest as part of another deal for a show that I host. And she said, how do you want to get involved? And I said, well, however you need me. I don't really want to MC anything, because I don't MC anymore. So anything but MC. She's like, would you moderate a panel? I go, yeah, I have no problem moderating a panel. And I don't really have a topic to speak. And I'm sure there's a bazillion speakers already. But I'll tell you this, here's where I'm best used. I'll tell you where I'm best used. And if you think this is a crazy idea, just shut it down and we don't have to do it. But this is what, in my experience, what I found, having done this for the past decade, I'm the best used first thing in the morning. And as soon as you get back from lunch, I'm the guy that comes out on stage, gets everybody fired up, delivers a 5 to 15-minute monologue, gets people fired up, and brings the MC out. And then I do the same thing after lunch. And they're like, that's fantastic. Let's do it. So I've started to really and literally it allows me to show up on one day. I have 2 spots and I'm done for the day. And it's the most liberating thing ever. Sometimes it's only one. Miami NFT week, I only did Saturday morning, 9 a.m. And guess how many people were in the crowd? About 12. But guess who was backstage? Mark Cuban, Grant Cardone, Tom Bilyeu. I mean, there was, it was you can't put a price tag on. Plus the relationships that I had already started to build previously. I ran into a lot of people and was able to back to events, reinitiating old relationships, developing new relationships. So, all of that, in it being said, to just continue to contribute to the efforts of impact of my brand. The end result is impact. The end result is not having someone hire me to help them start a podcast or to get booked on a stage. The end result is impact. How do I leave people different in that room than when they showed up before I hit the stage? Is the core focus, and then being able to establish relationships and identify people that are a fit for our program, because there was a point in time that anybody with a budget was a fit to do business with. And then I got real clear on my ideal avatar of my ideal client, and who's my perfect person to help start a podcast. And those people start to reveal themselves now through the, the experiences that I get to take part of and the stuff that we're doing. And podcast has become, it used to be just MC work, speaking work, and podcasting. Now I'm getting calls to do some brand stuff. So I host another show for a media outlet out of New York called Grit Daily that Gary V introduced me to 4 years ago. And I had no idea why. And it became a deal. And we're in our 4th month now. We had a record month this month. Actually, it's a pay to play model. So they have PR agencies hitting them up for coverage on the podcast. We do a 15-minute interview and we charge them $250 for the interview. So, and then we do offline events and installations and bring podcast studios to live events, etc. So just some wild stuff. But I have one rule: if it doesn't pertain to podcasting, then just not interested. So
yeah,
I hope that kind of sums up your question on, where did this all start? Where did it begin? How did you get your start? How did you do it? And there's no special sauce to becoming a speaker. If you want to become a speaker, start speaking. It doesn't matter where it is, on a soapbox in your backyard for some neighbors, at an old folks home, at a Rotary Club, at a Chamber of Commerce, any opportunity to be able. I'm going to speak to a group of high school students on Monday. So any opportunity that there is a audience to be able to make an impact, to have a productive conversation, to lead people differently, I'm all ears.
I love it. And having that goal in mind, and I'm blanking out on exactly how you said it, so I don't want to butcher it, but what you said about not faking it till you make it, but it was being it, right? So something along those lines. Can you repeat that? Because I think that really just kind of culminates and summarizes literally what you did to be able to get on that stage, and for really anybody to really just get on stages.
Yeah, exactly. That's becoming the part. That's
becoming the part. Yeah.
Play the part till you become the part.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so true that we have to do that. It's the whole fake it till you make it. That is something that too many people think about doing. Yeah. And it is, I mean, if you will, a little bit of play on words, but at the same time, it's playing the part so you become the part, where you're actually going out there and doing something. You're being proactive versus faking it till you make it. You just look like the part. You don't actually do anything to be that part. Just like the social media gurus who pose in front of the Lamborghini, right? It's like, it looks like they've made it, but they're faking it, hoping to be able to make it. Where, punch in the face.
Think about, our language is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And that saying in and of itself just identifies inauthenticity.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it. So fake it. So become somebody that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Act out of integrity, in my opinion. I mean, if we wanted to go, a few layers deeper on all that, but that was the business side of things, and there was a lot of discovery of what worked and what didn't work. But in 2016, it all changed. I took the entire year off. I had an unplanned sabbatical. I decided I wanted a girlfriend. So I've set out to find a girlfriend. There are a bunch of them out there. So I found one in March and 2016. And I knew that I had this nudge that, if there's more that can be done here. There's some character development. There's some personal development that really needs to get done, because you're still an angry son of a bitch. And there's some, I kept remembering all of these things, and I was resistant to it all. I'm like, I need to change, but I don't want to change. I need to change, but I don't want to change.
Yeah.
And I met her on March 1st, 2016. I'll never forget it. We went on a date. It was like a Tuesday night. We started talking about personal development. She's like, I'm in this course called gratitude training right now. And I was like, oh, does that teach you how to be grateful? She's like, nothing about it. She's like, it's you should experience it. You should experience typical personal development lingo of, you just got to experience it. I can't tell you, which is true. Everyone's experience is unique. But she was bugging me to join the course. And I'm like, no, I'm in implementation mode right now. I don't need to, I'm implementing right now. I did Tony Robbins, we walked on fire. And, I just a normal line of bullshit except for, the reality of, I'm open. Sure. Let's give this a shot. And she ended up signing me up for there was 3 parts. I only took for the first 2 parts. I really didn't believe in the 3rd part, but some of these courses can go on and on and on. They'll sell you whatever whatever you want to buy. But I took the first 2 parts, and the first 2 parts were just like, okay, first part 1, it's a long weekend. Let's figure out what's going on. And then part 2, let's get in, let's heal this. Let's get in here and fix all this. If you don't get rid of this shit, it'll kill you. So I was extremely resistant. I would constantly walk out. I would try to quit, the whole 9. It was a very team component, which is very common in the world of personal development. And what I quickly learned was that, I'll never forget, I said to one of the instructors on one of the first nights, he asked a question, and I think I answered something like, I just don't give a fuck. And he goes, where else does that show up in life? And I thought, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, started scratching my head a little bit. I was like, he goes, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I thought, oh shit, he's exactly right. So I stay in part one. Part one's fantastic. It's beautiful. Graduation, your family comes. It's a whole kumbaya. I'm new. I'm a brand. But part of part one, they had us identify who we were. And we had to write out a phrase of who we were. And I immediately spit out, I am a powerful, lovable, authentic leader. And I thought, am I? I don't know if I believe that or not, but that sounds pretty good. And it rolled right off my tongue. It was the first things ever come off my mouth. It was like, I'm a powerful, lovable, authentic leader. Those were all the things that I desired to be, Phil. That wasn't who I was, or maybe it was at my core. I just had not seen it yet.
Yeah.
And then part two was like a week of hardcore. Like it started on a Wednesday at noon and ended on Sunday night, like hardcore. Like we're going in, like the only way out is through. So we're going in, and this was intense. This was crazy. So I'm like, oh yeah, let's start a new relationship right now. Like, let's see if we can manage a relationship in the middle of like healing. Like that's insanity. That's like meeting somebody in rehab, which they advise you not to do. So I got through part two. She broke up with me in the middle of it or right after it. And she broke up with me because, I just wanted to be right about something. And that right was she was getting ready to leave for a trip for a month. And I had graduated that night and we went to dinner and I thought we were going to spend the whole evening there. It was going to be great, but she had not packed yet. And part of the training teaches us, what do you want to be right about? Like the world is in shambles because people want to be right. Waiving the right to be right there's a lot of freedom there. And I'll never forget that. So she ended up going to China and then breaking up with me, and I got done and I was all distraught and sideways and just going through it. And I started the third part of the program. I knew I didn't want to do it, but I did it because I thought, well, maybe she'll like me and we can figure this thing out again. So I ended up dropping out of that. She broke up with me. And then I just woke up one day and had an awakening moment. I'm like, okay, enough 2016. Like enough is enough out of my way. We're going to figure this thing out and we're going to get back in action, get back to work, figuring out what we're going to do with business, because knowing that I wasn't who I needed to become as a human being, but also my business, I hated the work I was doing. Like, I don't care about your Facebook page or your stupid Twitter account. Like, I just don't care. There's got to be more here, but we got a lot of time invested in this. So how do we stay in the space without leaving the space? That was the $1 million question. So I got up that day and, imperfect action, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. I got up and I'm like, let's go get a desk over at a co-working space around the corner. We'll tell them we're going to create content, record